Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Voter Education Informational hosted by the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Delaware chapter. My name is Candace Horn, and I am a co-chair of the Public Policy and Advocacy Committee for our chapter, and I, along with my co-chair, Dana Cobb, welcome you to tonight's event. Tonight's event will highlight the importance of voting in the state of Delaware as we prepare to head for the polls, but a little bit about the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. It is our mission to advocate on behalf of Black women and girls to promote leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health and education, as well as economic empowerment. And tonight's event does just that. At this time, we will take a moment to introduce our moderator and panelists for this evening. Starting off with our moderator, Melanie S. Daniels. Melanie S. Daniels holds a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, 2 master's degrees from the University of Delaware in Business Administration and Economics, and is currently completing her doctorate in Business Administration. She is a former financial advisor for Fox Channel 29 Philadelphia television, where she appeared on air live on the Good Day Philadelphia morning show. Additionally, she hosted a recurring segment, Money Matters with Melanie, for the network. Melanie is a Series 7 investment advisor, having spent several years as executive vice president with Sanders Investment Advisors Philadelphia. Prior to that, she served as an information technology and operations accountant with Johnson & Johnson, with Johnson & Johnson and Company, McNeil Pharmaceuticals in Fort Washington, PA. Currently, Melanie partners with her loving husband, Dr. Vincent J. Daniels, in their dental practice, Blue Diamond Dental PA in Wilmington, Delaware, where she serves as the business, accounting, and human resources manager. Melanie participates in several nonprofit community-based organizations and has served on several boards. Currently, she is the 4-term president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Delaware Chapter Incorporated, graduate advisor to the Lambda Gamma chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated at the University of Delaware, an active member of the Wilmington, Delaware chapter of the Lynx Incorporated, and associate member of the Newcastle County chapter of Jack and Jill America. Her board membership extends to the African American Economic Empowerment Fund, where she serves as chair. Virtue Event Planners, LLC, National Coalition of 100 Black Women Delaware Chapter, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Omega Chapter, and the Wilmington Achievers Program Incorporated. Melanie and her husband are charter members of the African American Empowerment Fund of Delaware Community Foundation, as well as charter members of the National Museum of African American History and Culture. She is a life member of Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University Alumni Association, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and the proud mother of 2 extraordinary daughters, Alexandria and Ariana. Please welcome our moderator. Next, we have panelist Tamara Smith. Tamara is honored to serve as the Executive Director of Teach for America Delaware. She has dedicated her career to ensuring educational equity for all students and has pursued this mission in various capacities. After graduating from Spelman College, Tamara joined Teach for America as a 2003 Philadelphia Corps member, teaching ELA in the school district of Philadelphia. Following her tenure as an educator and school administrator, Tamara joined the legislative team of former Congressman Robert Andrews, with a focus on economic development initiatives and education and immigration policy. Before accepting the opportunity to lead Teach for America Delaware, she served as the executive director of operations and co-school leader of Great Oaks Charter School in Bridgeport, Connecticut. A New Jersey native, Tamara is passionate about community-centered advocacy and the holistic development and empowerment of BIPOC students. She is a member and holds leadership positions with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Zeta Omega Chapter, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Delaware Chapter, and the National Alumni Association of Spelman College Delaware Chapter. Tamara also serves as a board member for Five Frogs Incorporated, the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, and the Wilmington Center for Education Equity and Policy, and is a member of the 2024 class of Leadership Delaware. Please welcome panelist Tamara Smith. Our next panelist is Dr. Kareen Upshur. Corrine Wilson Upshur is a woman who is extremely passionate in her chosen craft of mental health counseling. For over 20 years, Corrine has worked with adults and children to assist in meeting their mental health needs. She is a licensed master of social work, licensed behavior specialist, human services board certified practitioner, and a certified advanced alcohol and drug counselor. Her experience includes working in private school and community-based settings. She has held positions as a mental health therapist, school-based mental health therapist, foster care supervisor, behavioral specialist, consultant, and mobile therapist. Corrine has also taught Delaware state mandated classes on separating and divorcing to provide parents the best tools to manage this often difficult situation. Driven by her passion for helping others and a commitment to her community, Corrine is a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated Delaware chapter, Smyrna Clayton Rotary Club, Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League Guild, and Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Her education includes a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from Westchester University, a Master of Science in Community Psychology from Springfield College, and a Master of Science in Mental Health Counseling from Capella University. Corrine recently obtained her doctorate in psychology from Capella University, and she possesses a certificate in child sex abuse trauma from Widener University. Recently, Dr. Upshur was elected to the Smyrna Town Council, where she represents District 2. Please welcome panelist Dr. Corrine Upshur. And last but certainly not least is panelist Dr. Doris Griffin. Dr. Doris Griffin was born in Montclair, New Jersey, and spent her formative years in Seattle, Washington, and Baltimore, Maryland. She believes in people getting all of the education one can ask for, as demonstrated in her own life. Dr. Griffin completed her bachelor's degree in psychology at Hampton University, a Master of Education degree from Coppin State University, and a doctorate in education from Wilmington University with an emphasis on Christian school education. If that was not enough, Dr. Doris holds certificates of study in nonprofit management and a faith-based community development from the University of Delaware. Dr. Doris serves as the Executive Director of the Delaware Adolescent Program Incorporated, a statewide school for pregnant and parenting teen girls, and was an adjunct program coordinator at Wilmington University. Dr. Doris has extensive experience in nonprofit management and program development. Her experiences have allowed her to develop skills in grant writing, team building, program expansion, and organizational rebranding. She enjoys building leaders and helping them transition from one level of achievement to the next. She has found that she obtains the most joy in working with women of all ages to discover their individualized success pattern that enables them to shine brightly in any situation. Dr. Doris has embraced the opportunity to cultivate a business with her husband as the COO of Aspire and Achieve LLC to officially offer practical steps to people who are ready to activate better opportunities that enhance their lives holistically. In 1991, Dr. Doris married her college sweetheart and moved to Newark, Delaware, where she serves as an assistant pastor alongside her husband, senior pastor and founder, Dr. Meredith L. Griffin, at Harvest Christian Fellowship, which started in November 2006. Dr. Doris is also the thankful mother of two wonderful children, Rolanda Natalie, who is 28, and Meredith Lee III, who is 25. Please welcome panelist Dr. Doris Griffin. So before we get into tonight's discussion, we wanted to bring about a little bit of talk surrounding some of the myths that go along with voting in the state of Delaware. So myth number one, you must show an ID to vote in the state of Delaware. The actual truth with that is that while the ID is the quickest way to verify a voter's identity, it is not a requirement. Delaware does not have a defined list of acceptable identification. So if a voter does not present an ID, but is currently on the rolls and is present at their correct polling place, a voter must complete an affirmation of voter identity form before being permitted to vote. Myth number two, you must vote for the candidate affiliated with your party. In the general election, you may vote for any candidate who is on the ballot, no matter the party and no matter which party you are registered for. And because Delaware itself is considered a closed primary state, if you are an unaffiliated voter, meaning an independent, for example, you are not eligible to vote in the primary elections. And if you are not registered as a Democrat or a Republican specifically, you are not able to vote in those parties' respective primary elections. Myth number 3. You must be registered to vote in order to vote in a school board election. You do not need to be a registered voter to vote in the school board election, but you must meet the following 3 criteria. Be a citizen of the United States of America, as well as the state of Delaware, live in the school district which the election is being conducted, and you also must be 18 years of age on or before the day of the election when taking place. Myth number 4. If you are convicted of a felony, you cannot vote in the state of Delaware. If you have been convicted of a non-disqualifying felony and you have completed your sentence, you must register to vote again, even if you were previously registered prior to your felony conviction. So if you have been convicted of a disqualifying felony, which are listed on the screen, you are not eligible to vote. But if your felony is considered non-disqualifying and you have completed your sentence, you must re-register to vote in order to be able to have that right. And our last myth, you must have a fixed address in order to vote in the state of Delaware. You can vote in the state of Delaware even if you do not have a fixed address. While you are completing the proper registration form, if you are doing so in person, you must provide 2 pieces of identification with your name on it, one of which must have the address that you do receive mail on the application. So that can be a shelter or it can be an agency. Any location where you are receiving mail, as long as one of those 2 pieces of items that you bring to show for your identification has an address on it, you are able to vote, still register to vote in the state of Delaware. Madam Moderator, now turning the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair Horn, and welcome everyone to our Voter Education Forum. I'm excited about this conversation because democracy in the contemporary world demands, among other things, the educated and informed people sharing their voice. So we're going to talk about how easy it is for one to think that your vote doesn't matter, but it does. So ladies, if we could start this conversation with your perception of how important voting in elections is. And we'll start with Ms. Smith, we'll go to Dr. Griffin, and then end with Councilwoman Upshur.
Thank you so much, President Daniels, and thank you again to the Public Policy Committee for creating the space and this forum for us as a chapter, and of course for the state of Delaware. I think in my experience too often I've heard that my voice doesn't matter. We already know who's going to win anyway. Is it really, I don't have time to do it. I got to get the kids to school. And I don't have time to go before work or after work, things like that. But I think truly exercising your right to vote and doing all that you can, taking advantage of all the things that are around to actually support you getting there to vote, whether it's wise or things like that. I think that's critically important. So much of what happens in our society, whether it's school boards or at the state level or city council or mayors, these are critical policies that affect us every single day. I think, again, another misconception is that the president of the United States controls everything, or that the governor of a state controls everything, when in fact, so many very local and very distinct policies for a city or a county, those are set locally. And those elections, unfortunately, have some of the lowest turnout when we look historically at data. What I would say is, if you do want to see change happen, yes, it's at the ballot box, and then there's an and after that. It's the vote and after. There's lots of things that happen post that, but I would just emphasize and say that when it comes time to asking the questions of, well, who voted for that? Or how did this policy get placed? Or who made sure that this person got this contract? It really comes back to a lot of ways those who we elect. And the local elections, in my opinion, are just as significant, and in some cases, I think even more significant than our national elections that we see. So it matters. You may think that your one vote doesn't matter, but there's a case right now that is still active in Louisiana, where the first Black sheriff that was elected in a town, he literally won by one vote after two or three recounts, which they have to legally do when it's that close. And the state Supreme Court has already voted to overturn it and take it back. So when we talk about every vote counts, every single vote counts. And I'll pass it to Dr. Doris with that.
I think your comments, Ms. Smith, are absolutely spot on. It's amazing because I was just having the conversation about that very case with a young woman earlier this evening, because she's from that part of the country. And it is amazing how our one vote makes all of the difference. As you already noted, that case was is pending, but the election was won by one vote. And now there's all this rigmarole about things being overturned. Our vote in the state of Delaware is extremely important. Our voice is extremely important. And so to haphazardly go into an election booth, not doing our due diligence to study the platforms of the candidates as they are presenting themselves, we are doing ourselves and our state and our local school board and our county a disservice. And so it's more than a vote. It's educating ourselves and making sure that we are educating the people within our sphere of influence to ensure that not that we're telling them what to do, but we're making sure everyone has the facts. We're not focusing on feelings, we're focusing on facts. So what are the facts as far as the voting history of the candidate? What are the facts as far as their leadership experiences? What are the facts regarding their affiliation and what they have done? You know, Janet Jackson said it best: what have you done for me lately? So when you had an opportunity to speak up for me, did you speak up? If you had an opportunity to help our community, did you stand up or did you sit down? So we have a responsibility to continue to push people forward and allow them the opportunity to lead. And we need to recognize we have the opportunity to remove people when they have proven themselves to be ineffective and complacent, because our great state needs leadership, not people that are looking for opportunities to get likes on their Facebook page. Thank you. And I turn it over to the councilwoman. Maybe I'm speaking prophetically, Councilwoman. Maybe you're going somewhere in the near future.
Thank you, Dr. Doris. I want to say good evening, Madam President. Good evening to my coalition sisters. Good evening to family and friends that are on here. And absolutely, the local elections, to me, is where it all starts, because you have the power to make changes in what happens in your community. And so many times people feel that nothing is going to happen. Again, their voice and their vote doesn't matter, when in fact it very much does. There are times when I'm actually in council right now, but there are times when, you know, we might be changing the electric bill, the water bill, and we have to explain out why we're doing this. It could be on a county level. It could be something that has to do with, you know, recently we've had, you know, reassessments of homes because it hasn't been done in several years. So all of the voices of the people that communicate with me, communicate with council, mayor, it's important that we know exactly where you stand so we can make the best choice on what is best for you. And I can't hear that if you're not voting. I can't hear that if you're not calling me. I can't hear that if you're not showing up. That's the important part. Show up, call, get to know who your local legislators are, get to know who your state representatives are, get to know, it's a phone call, it's an email. Get to know who the candidates are so you know their platform and to see if it aligns with your value system to see if it's going to benefit you, your family, and your community.
Thank you so much, each of you, for your reflections on that, because I think it's important to drive the points home about the power of our voice. So, Councilwoman Upshur, we're going to stay with you just for a minute. We know that you are actually in session, so we thank you for skirting away and spending time with us. But a lot of individuals in the state know about the elections that are large, right? If they are federally based elections, if they are state based elections. But when we hear about council positions and school board, those are the least elected elections. So that means us as individuals go out less for those very important elections than to vote for the president of the United States. So can you speak a little bit to our audience about what it is that they are missing in terms of their opportunity if individuals are not taking the time to participate in council level votes as well as school board voting?
If you are not taking the time to participate on a council level, let me give you an example. We have 14,000 people that reside in the town of Smyrna. Last year, when I won, we also had a mayoral vote. So we were thinking that maybe more people will come out to vote because the mayor was running for another term. We had less than 400 people turn out for this vote. And when it came to the school board election, several thousand people came out to vote. And I was present because I wanted to witness the difference. And quite honestly, what I witnessed was something that was quite unusual. What I saw was people that was loading their cars up, 10 people at a time, vans, getting them to different voting locations for the school board election. Why? Because they wanted the person that was the president out of that office. What did that president look like? You and I. You and I. And she held that office for many years. But when they decided that they no longer wanted her to hold that office, they came out in droves, but would not come out for the school election, many of which came out for the school board election do not even have children that are in the school district. They just happen to reside in the school district. It's so important that we show up for all of these elections, all of them, because when it comes down to the school board, that's picking your school superintendent. That's picking your school policies and procedures. That's picking your curriculum. That's important. We had a situation here in Smyrna where it was approved by the art teacher, approved by several other teachers in reference to a painting that was on the wall in reference to, I'm trying to remember the artist at this point. But because the school district and council and the mayor are separate entities, we decided to come out and support the Black Student Union and say, hey, there's nothing wrong with this particular artwork. It was approved. So what is the problem? And they covered it up, but they had to take the cover down because, again, it was approved. The NAACP came out. It was news coverage. It was approved. It was nothing wrong. They were looking at the person that they were representing, her past and what she represented in the past, but not the positive messages that these children were trying to show today that have influenced their lives. Guess what? I made sure that I reached out to that Black Student Union and I'm supporting them.
Excellent. Excellent. So that brings up a very, very important subject that I'd like us to discuss. Community involvement is key. And if we can remember the yesteryears, community involvement, when the community came together and made a stand nonviolently about an issue, things change. They got attention and people listened. Our legislators listened and made the appropriate change that has to happen. As the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, we spend a lot of time advocating. We spend a lot of time making sure that we hold our legislators accountable for especially those bills, those laws that impact in any negative way our Black women and girls. So how can the community get involved with civic engagement opportunities in Delaware? Because they exist. Councilwoman, I'm sure we'll have you start, and then if we could have Dr. Griffin and Ms. Smith follow.
And ladies, I'm available because my meeting wrapped up. So I'm available. It's very important to find out what the civic engagement opportunities are in your town by doing the research. For example, knowing the NAACP, becoming a member of the NAACP. I also joined, I'm trying to look at my notes, Net Delaware. Net Delaware is an excellent resource. When I joined Net Delaware, that's when I found out about Black Staffers University. I joined that as well. So these are and of course the Shad Carey program through the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. I was one of the first graduates. So any opportunity that you have out there that you can learn and educate yourself so you can be an informed person in the community and then share that information. We can't live in a silo. We have to be able to share that information with others so they too can be informed. But it's also the responsibility of the organizations to make sure that they are out in the front and are recruiting people to join their organizations and sharing their platform so that that platform is one that is welcoming to them, where their voice is heard in that platform, because you don't know who might turn up to be your leader or the next leader from a program such as yours or such as any of these programs that are available out there. But people need to know about them. People need to know about them.
You know, most of us get involved civically when we feel wronged or we've become offended by something. And I can remember when my son was in school and he was attending a local charter school, and my son was wronged. And so my husband and I had to go to the school, and we recognized that we had been quiet for too long. And we really began to see the value of speaking up and speaking out. And unfortunately, many others are like us. When you wait, you don't get involved until you become offended or you get angry if somebody steps on your proverbial big toe, and you all of a sudden realize that you've got to come out and engage with other people. So I would encourage all of us to stop waiting until you become offended and you get hurt. But I would encourage you, particularly if you want to start locally, look at your school board, look at the curriculum that is being approved, look at how math is no longer taught the way many of us learned, how we were required to learn multiplication facts. There's some kind of estimation and guesstimation that's required of our students now in math as a concept. No longer are our elementary school students allowed to memorize the alphabet. They don't want students to memorize things. But this is what we allow to take place when we become complacent. We're all about making the Benjamins while somebody else is teaching the babies. So I really urge us to work together Now, many of us are not going to participate in the Shad Carey, Margaret Rose Henry civic engagement experience, and shame on you if you do not, but it's because I too am a graduate of that program. I urge you to participate in that. I believe there's an opportunity in the spring coming, but I know that you have girlfriends. I know that you have guy friends, and I know that, you're talking about the latest line dance, or you might be talking about the latest, gossip that is taking place. How about you talk about what's going on in your school district? I know that there's a district referendum coming up very, very soon, where additional tax dollars will be used. Many school districts control millions of dollars, which is a larger budget than what most of the mayors in our state have access to. So that's a whole lot of power for people that you don't know. And so we really want to get together and talk about things and be a part of conversations in a larger capacity so that we can make the right decisions about people who are in positions of authority, who are making decisions, so that we can be in agreement with all children, not just those that belong to a particular hue.
And I'll just add, I think Councilman Upshur and Dr. Griffin really touched on many things I would note. I would just offer to those listening, it can feel overwhelming, or I've been told and heard it can feel overwhelming of how do you get involved. There are amazing programs like we have like Shad Carey and Network Delaware and things with other organizations as well. But what I would offer is a good starting place is just always listening. And one of the beauties coming out of COVID, I mean, a lot of this, of course, existed pre-COVID, but it's really been ramped up, is so many of our council meetings, our school board meetings, our state level committee meetings, they're virtual, they're recorded, they're there. And there are times myself, even when I first moved to Delaware 5 years ago, and I wanted to better understand, yes, it's part of my job to better understand the systems. I didn't have the time to drive to Dover all the time or get there on time for certain meetings. While you're cooking dinner, kind of like a podcast, while you're cooking dinner, while you're going to work, listen to also your local school board meetings. All of that is public, the agendas, all of those pieces, and get curious. I always, again, offer to say to listen again, and listen one more time just to better understand. And that way, when you do have the opportunity to come to either vote or go to a forum to hear from a candidate, you have questions, or you might have more inquiry as to what their position or what their stance is as well. And again, a lot of these things get pushed under the rug, or folks think it's really not that big of a deal if I don't necessarily what's going on with my city council. It's already been decided, or folks already know what they're going to do. But listening and learning as to like what are the key issues that are being brought to the table or that are being brought during public comment, again, during council meetings, school board meetings, things of that nature. That is a really good starting place if you're feeling like, where can I go, or I don't have the capacity to commit to a program? Just start to listen and learn. And then that way you can also find out from some of the public comment, people who are there representing other organizations. Well, let me go visit or maybe listen to one of their, webinars that they may have, like the Coalition or other organizations as well. And that can help inform you and get into building the habits of how you can best use your civic duty when it comes to the ballot box.
Thank you, all of you. Excellent information. And I think that this conversation now, is right where we need it to be, because we've talked about the importance of these local elections and the school board elections. So, Ms. Smith, let's talk about your lens through Teach for America and how the school board elections can impact not only your organization, but those teachers in it, our students in it, and our families across the state.
Thank you for that. And in all the ways, there's a lot of influence. For context, at a very basic level, school boards, members of school boards, they're charged, like they are the governing body of school districts across this country. They are charged with hiring and evaluating the superintendent, whoever is the chief officer of that district, again, here and other places around the country. They are also in charge of setting the budget and all of those pieces as well. It is an incredibly powerful and influential role that I think is often overlooked, unless it's a time of crisis. When I was in high school, I was a student representative from my high school to our local school board, and it was routine that no one came out. The library of one of our local high schools in our district was completely empty until it came up that they were thinking about changing the schedule for final exams for seniors, and we had 200 people show up. But I remember going to those monthly meetings, and there would routinely be major things happen, things that I didn't fully understand at age 17 and 18, but things that were going on, major things, curriculum decisions, hiring consultants, also designing of like evaluations and things of that nature. So, I want to name that. What I would offer is that whether you have children or not, I'm not a parent. Yes, this is my work. This is what I do, but understanding and being involved in your local school board, I feel like, is every citizen's responsibility. Because our children, it sounds very cliche, but our children are our future. This is critical. How I related to the to the workforce is, to the business community is, I'm like, we are generating and creating the next workforce that you need. I have personal feelings about it, of wanting to ensure all of our children and babies are thriving and not surviving, and they have all the things and yes, all that matters. But the reality is that this is the next workforce. This is the group of students that will then create the next generation of jobs, be prepared, hopefully, for the next generation of jobs, and also ensure that Social Security and other things still exist and all that good stuff. So it's really critical. Your tax dollars, that's already been said, are part of the school district, and they help to pay for curriculum. The school board may decide, where extra funding may be going to help support student services, but that is also influenced by, again, like administrators, which I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but also parents may have a perspective as well that they want to include. What I'll name also, as far as like curriculum and all those things, that has always and forever been accessible to parents. It's only now just recently getting, attention. There was never a time you couldn't go to your child's school and not access, like for that. So again, school boards hold a lot of power. They hold a lot of influence, and especially around how resources are allocated. What I will name is, I think it's important for those who may not necessarily be considering, why would I run for school board? I think there's a lot of power in the diversity of a school board, not just necessarily somebody who has kids. It might be someone who has grandkids or a niece or a nephew, but maybe not children of their own. I think there's just a lot of power in having diversity of thought at that table, and also all that they're doing to empower parents to better understand how resources are being allocated, how they're measuring success and supporting kids. And again, that's another opportunity. These are all online. All the meetings are decided ahead of time, again, due to sunshine laws. They are, advertised, listen to them, hear what the issues are at hand, so that there isn't necessarily a scramble to try to reverse some policy that may be trying to be put into place that's already been put in the works 3 months ago that we're now just hearing about. So those elections are critical, and those are routinely, last thing I'll say, they are routinely the lowest turnout. I've worked up and down the 95 corridor. It is the lowest turnout, whether I was in Connecticut or Philly or Camden, wherever it may be, or even here. It's always the lowest turnout, and it's one of the most critical and most powerful, most influential roles in the country.
Thank you for that. Dr. Griffin, Councilwoman Upshur, would you like to add to that, or should we move on to this all-important term, this buzzword that's been swirling around the last couple of months of redistricting?
Madam President, we can move on.
Let's talk about redistricting. And just for edification of those that are attending tonight, let's talk about what redistricting is and how it affects the political landscape, especially here in Delaware. Councilwoman Upshur, would you like to start that discussion?
I certainly will. Because of redistricting, I was able to run this year and win my election. Last year, I ran as council at large. Last year is when we had redistricting. So this position became available because of redistricting for me. And it's important because with redistricting, that is how, through the census, we are able to determine where change needs to occur, where we need to place those barriers, those lines, because people are moving in, people are moving out, and we need to be able to subsequently be able to staff our schools, build our schools. We need to be able to know what our community needs. And with redistricting, we're able to do that. We're able to learn exactly what our community needs. And I'm very thankful for redistricting because of that. I have this particular role. And also, it's important because then you get to learn exactly who is in your town, what the demographics are, what their ethnicity is, where from canvassing, I was able to learn where people are moving from, why they moved here. So I was able to understand, because I too originally was a transplant, but I've lived here for 20 years now, so we're not going to say that anymore. But you know, people are moving here from Maryland, people are moving here from Philadelphia, people are moving here from New Jersey, you know, people are moving here from New York. I'm originally from Philadelphia, so I was able to have those conversations with the people from Philadelphia to learn why they are in fact moving here, and to understand that, hey, they consider Smyrna a sleeper town, because people, of course, the state of Delaware, people consider a retirement state. You know, my dad, who's on the line, he's here because he retired here in Delaware. You know, people love what we have to offer. I was even at a conference in Atlanta recently, and when people saw that I was from Delaware, first thing they said was Lewis Beach. The beach is in Delaware. And these are people that live across the country. So people are recognizing what we have here to offer in the state of Delaware. We have, you know, lower taxes. I mean, for the house that I was paying for in Pennsylvania, the taxes were like 3 times as much as I'm paying here in Kent County. And then we also have to be able to explain what I'm noticing is with the people that are living here, because they're used to living in bigger cities, that they didn't quite understand that our firefighters are actually volunteer. So we had a terrible loss of a home in one of our 55 and older developments. And what I did is I made sure I got in contact with the chief of police, because he saw, because like Tamara said, our meetings are filmed. They're on Zoom. So you can have access to the meetings. You can play it back, you can see it, you can come here, and we're here. So he saw the meeting after this fire. So when I reached out to him, he was on board for me to be able to set up a meeting with that particular community so he can explain what his role is and what the role of his firefighters are. And the fact that they spent 10 minutes videotaping this fire instead of making that phone call. This house did not have to burn down. Thank God everybody is okay. But, and you know, he had to share with them, we are all volunteers. So the time it takes for us to get dressed in our own homes, get to the fire home, get the firehouse, get the equipment to come back to the fire, we still did that in 4 minutes. We did that in 4 minutes. So when he was able to sit and explain to them what their roles are and that they're not paid, and said, hey, we could take some volunteers. Are you interested? You know, so it was like giving it right back. Like, we're here, but you could also come and volunteer as well, because people are used to where they came from and where people are paid and they want to hold them accountable. When I told them when I was running that I was not getting paid, they were astonished. They were like, wow, you mean you're doing this for free? Yes, because this is my passion. I want to serve the community. This is something I've been doing in various capacities for a very long time. It's not about $1 for me. It's about serving the people. It's about being the voice for the people who might not want to speak. It's about being present.
Dr. Griffin, would you like to add in for redistricting?
Yes, thank you so very much, Councilwoman. Your comments were definitely spot on. I'm all about servant leadership. That really touches a chord in me. Talking about the redistricting, every state has a legislature or a commission that is assigned to handle redistricting. Now, the problem that we face with redistricting is the potential for gerrymandering. And gerrymandering, in short, means manipulating boundaries. And so in a lot of cases, those boundaries are manipulated to our disadvantage. And when I say our, I mean those of color, so that we are unable to have an equitable vote. And we are shifted in such a way that if there is a block or a grouping of people that subscribe to a particular ideology, their vote is watered down because the boundaries are manipulated. And so we've got to do our best to ensure that we participate in the census. We've got to make sure that we are counted. We've got to make sure that when redistricting is being looked upon, that we're making sure that we are not being etched out. Many states have had court cases and gone to the Supreme Court regarding wrongfully being manipulated, the boundaries being manipulated. And so we've got to make sure that we keep our eye on what is happening. Quick plug for NCBW. I definitely believe that we are all about public policy. We are all about knowing what our community needs, particularly where it concerns Black women and girls. And so, if this is something that, means is of significance to you, and you are a woman here in Delaware, we encourage you to be involved. But if you are in another part of the country, there are chapters all over where you'll get educated and be given opportunities to get involved. If you are not a part of an organization, as I said, instead of getting on social media or getting on YouTube or TikTok and gossiping, get together with your circle of influence and talk about these issues, talk about what is of most importance, so that you can begin to see what is happening in your very own community. Thank you.
Excellent points, ladies. We've talked about the importance of these local elections and how this council work, as well as the school district work, impacts our families in very grave ways if we're not paying attention to what's being voted on and who composes those boards. But let's take a broader look for a minute and talk about the upcoming year, 2024. What do you see in terms of Delaware as the important elections that we as informed citizens should be aware of, from the federal level down through the state? Can we spend a little time talking about those elections? And I think that it bodes well for us to talk about the impact of primaries and what does that mean then for the September election. So if we could talk about it a little bit, Dr. Griffin, we're going to start with you, and then Ms. Smith and Councilwoman Upshur.
Thank you very much. Our involvement, again, goes right back to educating ourselves about our candidates and determining what platforms are people are standing on, and how it aligns with the things that are of most importance to us as citizens of this great state. We're watching the governor or the gubernatorial candidates come out one by one, and we're looking at what is happening with the lieutenant governor candidates. And I just happened to be talking to one of the lieutenant governor candidates not too long ago. And one thing that she said to me that I think is noteworthy for all of us: yes, we will elect a governor, but when we look at the lieutenant governor, who is ready to serve day one? So if something happens to the governor on day one, who as lieutenant governor is also ready as day one? And these are the ways that we must be able to look at all of our candidates. Who is actually ready And if they say they are ready and they are someone that has been sitting in the position, what have they done to prove that they are still day one ready? Day one, if I was elected in 1991, day one ready for 1991 looks differently day one, 2024. So we can't do what we did in yesteryear with today's problems. So these are things that we have to look at from the federal level through each and every election. It is vitally important that we analyze what is taking place. It's vitally important to attend candidate forums. It's vitally important to look at printed documentation of what people are putting forward as their platforms and things that they hold true as far as what they will accomplish, and making sure that we are teasing out unrealistic statements of things that people are going to do. It is not realistic to say that I'm going to remove all taxes. That's not realistic. So that's going to be a candidate that we're going to have to applaud, but place on the shelf come election day because they're not speaking the truth. So we have to be analytical. Again, it's not about feelings, it's about facts. And if we can just stay true to what we need to do in reference to meeting the needs of our citizens here, I think we will begin to see who rises to the top and who we will continue to applaud for and encourage, but will not elect them to lead us.
Dr. Doris, I think you hit so much of it on the head. I often say, you said feelings versus facts. I always say this is business. And, Delaware is a very small state. We're all connected by less than 2 degrees, 1 degree, not even, the 6 or 7 degrees of, like Kevin Bacon metaphor that's often used. This is a very small state with some incredibly high impactful elections that are coming in 2024. In my opinion, all of them are important. I'm not even going to rank them. The reason why I say that is because we just historically as a state, it can be a very good thing when you have longstanding members who hold their seat. And it can also be a challenging thing when you have members who hold their seat for a long time if they're not being effective. What I would offer is, as those of you who are on the call or those watching this recording have either already started to do your research, as Dr. Doris has already mentioned, started to go to candidate forums, started to listen and hear, I'd also offer to take a look at their previous track record. What have they accomplished that has then had impact? Less about how many bills they might have passed or whatever it is. What did that then translate to for change or results, whether in Wilmington or across the state? Anytime I'm meeting with folks, it's less about what can you do for me now, it's what have you done? And how has that literally changed lives? And again, not perfection, but it's always good to stand there and say, well, I, co-signed this bill or I did that. That's great. And how many Delawareans' lives changed by that? How many folks got access to housing? How many students got access to wraparound services because of that? Or did we just write a nice fat contract for somebody else and they got paid and they checked a box and got it done? So my offering would be, as we're going forth through this election, and it can be overwhelming. It can be incredibly overwhelming with the sensory overload of the amount of information that you get. It's why, really center in what matters to you. There are a lot of issues that matter to me, whether it's women's reproductive health or education or all of those things. But there are some key things that I look for in any candidate that either I'm supporting or that I'm going to vote for or I'm going to make a donation for. And I center myself in that. I'd offer just be clear and centered in what matters to you the most. There are a lot of things that matter to all of us, but what matters to you the most in your elected officials? Remove, like the personal from it, focus in the facts and the business, what has been done, because we're talking about business. This is a business. The state is a business. It's not personal. This is business. And I've had that conversation with people, whether here and other places, of like, this is why I'm going to support X person and why I'm not going to support you. Doesn't mean I don't love you, but let me tell you why and why I'm going that route. And that can be hard. That can be hard, but I think that's critical when we talk about effective change and effective leadership. I'm not going to rank the election. Last thing I'm not going to rank them. They all matter. They really do. But maybe the federal one just a little bit. It's really important because just historically, we know with our state, those are long longstanding positions as well. And I'll pass it to Councilwoman Upshur.
Sorry, ladies, I had it on mute. So I'm just going to basically co-sign on everything my two sisters said. We do have some very big elections coming up across the state of Delaware. If you don't know what they are, I'm not going to go over the list. We know that we have a governor that's going out. We do know that we have a lieutenant governor's position that's available. We do know that Lisa Blunt Rochester is running for senator, so her position's available. I said I wasn't going to go over this, but it seems like I am. But these are—
Please do.
Okay. And, you know, we also, since if Lisa's running for Congress, then we have someone that's going to be taking her seat for senator. So we need to be able to look at these candidates. And it's so important for us to just not go to the voting poll and just, I'm Democrat, I'm going all the way down, I'm Republican, I'm voting all the way down, because everybody might not align with what your values and your views are. So when you investigate these candidates, reach out to these candidates, see if they have time to answer your questions personally, make sure that they are available. They are citizens just like you and I. And if they want your vote, then they should be able to make time to answer your questions. Show up where they are. If they're out there canvassing, if they're out there and have, again, a candidates forum, or they're at a debate, make your way there. If it's on Zoom, put your question in there. But again, make sure that you get your question answered so you feel comfortable voting for the candidate that you think best meets you and your family's needs. You don't want somebody in office that's not going to be standing up for you and your family's rights. I know I don't. So do your research, ask questions, reach out to those candidates, see if they have time for you, schedule some time, or show up where they're showing up.
Excellent points. Excellent points, ladies. I think we continue to drive home the importance of making sure that our voice is heard. So we know that we've got that senator position that's open, right? Which, because Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester is going to run for that position, then her Congress position will be open. We know that the mayor's position is open. We know that lieutenant governor, we know that governor, we know that there are these positions that also affect the representatives of the different districts through our state. And those representative positions are just as important when we're looking at the entire Delaware landscape. Councilwoman Upshur, you made a very important point that I think that we should just spend a little time talking about, is not just voting in the block of how your political affiliation. So let's talk about political affiliations, right? Because there has been a long-standing comment about the majority of African Americans, Black folks, being Democrats, and those that are Republicans are not in line with what the majority Black community needs to be in terms of affiliation. And then there is this affiliation that is open for a combination of different individuals. So let's talk about political affiliation. What does it mean? And why is it important in 2024 not to do these affiliation blocks in terms of voting? And looking at, as it's been said by all three of you, the importance of who's running for office that is making the decisions that support what we believe for our individual families. So let's talk about political affiliations for a second. And we can start anywhere, any one of our panelists.
I'll start. So we know that the political affiliations, they influence how we vote, right? And again, our affiliations influence how we perceive the world. So we want a candidate that aligns, again, I've said that throughout the night, that aligns along with what we want, what we need, what we feel our community needs, what we feel like our family needs. So we would be leaning more towards that particular candidate, right? But at the same time, we have so many that we have to vote for this year. And we do not have to, as I said, vote Republican down the line if we're Republican, vote Democratic along the line. We might need to cross over. You know, like I used to hear Biden say all the time, you got to go over the aisle sometimes and shake hands with the person over the aisle. Well, you know what? In 2024, we might need to cross over the aisle and align with some people that we might not have ordinarily aligned with, because now we're seeing that they align with some of our core values, you know? So that's really, really important that we, again, we have to do our research. We have to make sure that this person's not just saying these things because they want our vote. We have to make sure that they are going to do what they said that they're going to do. We have to look at their track record. One thing that I'm not a fan of is career politicians. I am just not a fan of it. I don't believe someone should be a council person for 40 years. No shade, Philadelphia. That's just how I feel. I feel like it's something that, you know, if your time is your time. And when your time is up, either you're moving out of office or you're moving towards something greater. You're moving to the next step in the political realm. But at the same time that you're learning, when you're moving towards the next step, that you're learning from the roles that you've had. So people are knowing you. I'm just new in this role, but please believe I've been sitting in this seat 20 years. I've been doing my research while I lived here for 20 years. So I'm not just involved with organizations of people that look like me. I'm involved in organizations where I pulled up my chair and sat at the table and made myself known. And I think that that is very important for us to be able to do the same. Because if we're just talking to each other, then it's like going to a party with a bunch of your girlfriends. You know, we have to be able to talk to people that don't look like us. We have to be able to have allyship, because we need their votes just as much as they need ours. Your vote is valuable, and we need to make sure they know our vote is valuable.
Excellent point, Councilwoman Upshur. Dr. Griffin, Ms. Smith, did you want to add anything to that? I think she drove that point right on. Okay, it's driven home. It's driven home. Let's just spend a couple of minutes because our targeted discussion, moderated by myself, is coming to a close, and we want to make sure that we answer the questions of those of our guests that have joined us this evening. But just want to get you all to share where you feel we as older citizens can assist with our young people, those that are just coming of age, and it is time for them to exercise their vote. I know our 20-year-olds are very focused on what is happening in the world around us and how others are being treated or not being treated. And sometimes they fixate on one particular subject or one particular issue instead of looking at the broader impact of what our legislators have to contend with when they are voting, whether it's at the federal level or at the state level. What words of encouragement and advice can we give to our young potential voters about the importance of looking and researching and fielding questions about all the issues as opposed to just one?
I can kick
I'll
us off
start.
with that one.
So go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Griffin. I'll kick us off and just say, so I've had this conversation with some younger folks and also have been asked this before. There are two things that I would offer of how we can support, actually three things, I'm sorry, three ways that we can support, and also just if there's any young folks on this call as well. Number one, there's just a misalignment with not understanding how democracy works. There's a lot of reasons why folks aren't brought in as to how it works. And I don't mean voting. I mean literally how some of the biggest changes, whether it's at the state level, the county level, city level, the federal level, how some of the biggest changes in history happen, whether it's civil rights or housing or gerrymandering or voting rights, all those things. There's a disconnect of not knowing. I always say people don't know what they don't know. So it's incumbent for us to bring folks in without maybe a condescending tone. Not saying anyone would do that, but I've also talked with folks about that. People don't know what they don't know. So you can't fault people for, for not knowing what they don't know. You got to bring them in of how it actually worked. One of my favorite things that I have seen trending recently on social media is, and it comes off and on, is there's no way that there's this belief that there's no way that we would be able to pull off the Montgomery bus boycott today. We can't even boycott Starbucks, just using it as an example. So once you get into the story of like actually how that happened, how it was literally over the course of a couple of years, not just like 2 weeks, and how people were called out if they got on the bus or anything like that. That's a whole thing. So that's one, is people don't know what they don't know. We have to bring in and understand democracy with love. Two, with that, I would say for our younger folks, who's already been named, is really digging deep to understand the issues. And that comes again with a history lesson. There's a lot of context as to why we are where we are as a nation, why we are as we're in certain parts of the world with conflict. Like that didn't just happen overnight. There's a lot of history around that. And that can be hard to disseminate, to figure out who's telling the truth and who is that, and that, all of those pieces, but getting as informed as you can and understanding as to how we got to this place. And it's always not just one thing. There's always like a catalyst of a few different things to get us to this place. Again, whether it's at the local level, federal level, international level, whatever it may be. So that was that. Then three, what I would offer is bringing your patience. We live in a time in a society where everything is quick and easily accessible, whether it's watching your favorite series all the way through, like all 17 episodes in a sitting, skipping commercials, or, all of those things. Everything is so fast. Information and access to it is completely fast. And there's a lot of positives to that. And there's also a lot of challenges with that. And so it's really easy to sit behind your phone or your laptop or whatever it may be and tweet out or post on Instagram or Facebook some kind of like indignation of like, if you stand for this, I don't know how you can stand for anything, when they really don't understand. Again, like to my first point, they really don't understand how things work. It doesn't mean you can't take a stand and have a position on something. There are things for me that are non-negotiable, but that list isn't a mile long, and it shouldn't be a mile long. There are things in my own personal beliefs that are like a non-negotiable of like, I just fundamentally like, that's a hard no for me, but that list isn't wild long, but there's a wild long list when I've talked to young folks of like, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, we can't do that. And then I always pose it back with questions of asking them, well, how do you think your sneakers got made if you're so against child labor? You have those nice Nikes on. Do you think Nike actually created those in some kind of equitable way? They didn't. So let's talk about that and how those things and how we can combat those things without necessarily compromising our beliefs as well. So that would be my offering. Bring folks in, be patient with tone, bring them into the history and help them understand how the sausage is made and how we get things done. And just always assume best intent, because folks really don't know what they don't know. And there's just a lot of misinformation of how we got to this place as a nation, how we've gotten to even to this place recently. And it's also the reason why so many things have been able to be undone, like the case right now in Louisiana, how with like voting laws and voting rights are all looking to be overturned, because there isn't even understanding of how we got to that point and what it took to get there in all of those pieces. So I spoke longer than I wanted, sorry.
I think you made excellent points. I have the opportunity to work with young women on a daily basis, pregnant and parenting teen young women. And you are right, they don't know what they don't know. They are very passionate about topics, but just need more insight. And you are very right to say that we as older people must watch our tone when we are communicating and explaining. It's just incredibly important to listen to them, to really allow them to fully express their thoughts, because you want to know where their thoughts are coming from and how they got to think a certain way, so that you can infuse truth into what it is that they are saying to help shape and bring some rationalization to their thought process. So, we do have a couple of young people that I have had the opportunity to hear from, and they do have quite a few political stances that we are continuing to discuss. But I think you raised something that a light bulb went off, bringing in more people to talk about those issues. And I'm not necessarily talking about a candidate, but I'm talking about someone that it may be already within our state legislature to do a couple of things: talk about current process, talk about what is actually happening, and might even light a flame to say, come on and get involved. So there's an opportunity to enlighten, there's an opportunity to educate, and there's an opportunity to model, so that our young people can see that there may be opportunities for them to come and be a part.
Well said, ladies. Well said. This has been incredible discussion. I, of course, could go on for another hour talking about these issues and the importance of our vote. I think the takeaways as we go into our open question and answer time is the fact that our voice is important. Our vote is important. Hearing from us individually is important. And participating in elections is the easiest way for our voices to be heard. There are a number of different outlets that we've discussed, but to make sure that your voice is heard starts with exercising your right to vote. So that we want to close this moderated discussion time with, in asking that everyone present take the time to encourage someone someday, every day, to exercise their right to vote, exercise sharing their voice with those that make and break us as a community, as a state, and those are our elected officials. So thank you for this time that we've spent in discussion. We are going to continue on with questions and answers. I will turn the rest of the program over to our more than able-bodied Chair, Candace Horn.
Thank you, Madam President, for serving as an excellent moderator for our important discussion that we had tonight. And thank you so much to our panelists for providing excellent commentary to the questions that were provided this evening. We will now go over to our chat monitor, Ms. Candace Davis, and who is also assisted by co-chair Dana Cobb, with any questions from our attendees this evening for our panelists. One moment, Ms. Davis. I did see a hand from Councilwoman Upshur.
Ladies, I'm going to have to excuse myself. Staff has stayed long enough for me to be able to continue with you, but they want to close the lights off on me. They want to go home. So I did answer some questions that I saw in the chat. I want to thank you for this opportunity and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Madam Chat Monitor, it is back to you.
Good evening, everyone. The first question in our chat is, actually, we can't ask that because Councilwoman Upshur has just exited the meeting. The next question is, does the state of Delaware have a balanced bipartisan group to ensure redistricting is fair and balanced?
I think that's an excellent question. I think every state has legislators and or a commission that is assigned. And I do believe by law, it is to be a bipartisan group that is working together. However, I'm sure there are some loopholes in there that we're not aware of, but that's a really, really good question.
Thank you. Sorry, I had my mute on. Goodness. So can someone speak about the importance of serving on RD committees here in the state of Delaware?
I'm assuming is that redistricting committees?
That is what I'm going to assume as well. The question just said RD, but I believe it is redistricting since it came through during that discussion.
I believe that we are discussing local party committees at the grassroots level. That's the RD committees I believe they're referencing. If you ask this question, if you could add some clarifying language, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
So while we're waiting for that clarification, just to share with our listeners, there are a plethora of opportunities to participate at varying levels in our government in helping to shape the bills that are being considered in committee, as well as looking into and researching areas of concerns that our legislators have. Those committees can be as simple as being appointed to them or contacting your legislator and saying, I have an interest in participating in researching this particular area, or contacting your legislator and saying, I know that you are working on this particular bill in committee. I'd like to be a part of helping to fashion what that bill looks like in committee. Now, of course, you can serve in this support capacity, but it does give you an opportunity to see how the bill is being crafted, where the information is coming from, how to gather the research that helps our legislators make informed decisions. There are opportunities up and down our legislative ladder for individual citizens to participate in this effort. I think that as we talk about our ability to get involved in this process, we have to look for every opportunity where our passions, our knowledge, and our gifts can be put to work. And those things that we are passionate about, there is more than likely an opportunity to get in and fashion law or influence legislators with regard to it. We talk very often in Marianne Shea Carey, Margaret Rose Henry Civic Engagement Program about understanding the needs of your community, understanding what's happening in your community. And Councilwoman Upshur made a very important comment with regard to working with the police chief and the fire department and identifying the fact that they are volunteers. We took time in our session in Marianne Shea Carey and Margaret Rose Henry to talk about a development that did not have enough fire hydrants to adequately put out a fire for every home in the development. And so the challenge to the cohort members at that time was to go and find out, are there enough fire hydrants in your development? If your house were to burn and this volunteer firefighting team came in, would they have a central point to access the water that would indeed save your home? And it is amazing how there are a number of developments throughout the state of Delaware that did not have those fire hydrants. And it's inspired and gave passion to those that lived in those communities to actually do something about it. So it can start just as simple as that. What is it that's happening that impacts your community? And guess what? Two of those individuals that had the issue with the fire hydrants made sure that the council members voted and approved in the budget a line to expand the number of fire hydrants. It's things as simple as that, saving a life, saving a home, that can impact where we're going as individual citizens and our actions to move these legislators to a point where they are doing something positive for our communities. Ms. Davis, you can continue on with the chat questions.
We don't have any. If anyone else has any, please type them into the Q&A box so that we can get the answers from our panelists this evening.
So while we're waiting for any closing questions, I know that our discussion was so thorough that it is hard to come up with things that we did not talk about. But if we were, Dr. Griffin and Ms. Smith, to share some closing charges to those that are here with us, please share those closing charges. Dr. Griffin, you can begin.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Thank you to the Public Policy Committee for the opportunity to participate. My charge to our coalition sisters as well as our viewing audience would be to remember and say out loud, it's not about me. And because we cannot operate thinking only about ourselves. And I mean that by saying that we must be willing to be a voice to those that feel disenfranchised. We must be a voice to those that don't feel like they have opportunities. We must be a voice for those that don't feel like anyone cares or listens to them. And so I would encourage us to remember that. I know you're tired. I know you have a lot going on. I know you're committed. I know you have bills and family obligations. However, let's remember it's not about us. It's for those that we serve. It is very important that we remember we must push to speak up and speak out. So that's my charge, to remember it's not about us, to remember that we must be able to be a voice for those that cannot or do not feel comfortable speaking up for themselves. That would be the biggest thing. And also remember, it is not about feelings. It's all about facts. Stick to the facts and forget about the feelings.
Yeah, I would just offer similarly, thank you also to the Public Policy Committee. Thank you, President Daniels, for moderating. Always great to share space with Dr. Griffin and of course, Councilman Upshur. I'd offer, be clear, as I stated before, be very clear in what truly matters to you. And that, and we can say again, well, everything matters to me, but what really roots you in how you make decisions, how you navigate life, where you choose to live, all of those pieces be rooted in that. Two, listen again and listen one more time to these council meetings, to these school board meetings, to these committee meetings. All of this is public information. Nothing is not public. So start listening, even if you don't know where to begin. And you don't have to pick and listen to every committee, but start with your local school board, start with your city council. Choose one of the committees that's rooted in your why as to what matters to you that you start listening to, whether it's education or labor, whatever it may be. And just start listening to understand what the priorities are. When we come back from the holiday, we'll be coming in and everything will be, kicking off with session. So what are folks already saying that they're thinking about proposing as part of that? For that's two. And then three, please just remember that people don't know what they don't know, whether it's around voting, whether it's around, the history of how things are made, of how we've gotten where we are, just even recently, how policy is made, and what it really means to work across lines of difference. And that's the key thing, is working across lines of difference. You don't have to compromise yourself, but you have to learn to work across lines of difference in order to make effective, long-standing change. It's not glamorous, but it's the work. So just bring your patience as you talk to young folks, but I'm going to also offer anyone, because I've also encountered folks older than me who are very adamant about where they are, what they believe, and they're not changing that. So I would just say anyone. Bring your patience with anyone, and just always assume best intent. People don't know what they don't know, and you were once in their shoes of not necessarily understanding how the democracy works, how things are made. Bring that patience, bring them along, bring them to the table, and help them to just continue to understand and grow. And you also continue to grow, again, grow and understand of just why this matters and why it's important, and what issues are critical for us to thrive here in the state of Delaware and not just survive.
Excellent points and excellent charges for us to close with. Always great to have good conversation with the two of you, and certainly Councilwoman Upshur, as she has departed us. You have a wealth of information, a wealth of understanding, and thank you for taking the time to share with those of us present. Chair Horn.
Yes, I echo the sentiments of President Daniels as we close out this program. Ladies, thank you so much, not just for your expertise and the resources that you shared with us this evening, but for giving us your passion towards this very important subject. And it is my hope that with our program through NCBW and making sure that we are hitting our topic areas to the community, that this educational program has reached everybody who has attended today. And we look forward to heading towards the polls a little bit more prepared than we were before we came here tonight for these very important elections and key races that are coming up in 2024. So before we head out, switch over this screen real quick. Just want to share with our attendees just some information about our upcoming races that are coming up. So we do have some dates that we want everyone to get ready to mark their calendars for in regards to our upcoming presidential primary election, as well as our school board election, our state primary elections, and our general elections. So make sure you have your calendars marked with these dates that are on screen in relation to early voting for most of these races, as well as the regular voting dates that will take place. We also have it coming up, if you live in the 37th Representative District and you are on today, there is a representative election that is a special election that is coming up for your district. Currently, early voting is going on, and for this week, early voting is from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the location noted on the screen. And then the general election for that special election is Thursday, December 21st. So if you live in the 37th district, you want to make sure that you get out to the polls and you vote for the candidate of your choice. And also, before we leave today, we also want to note some of our upcoming events. We have one as early as tomorrow, the strategies to tackle Delaware's housing challenges, that will be hosted by our first Vice President of Programs, Sharice Brewington-Carr, who will be moderating that event. You can register at ncbw.org to attend that event to get more information on the housing issues in Delaware and receive some essential information and facts. And then we also have an upcoming information session a week from today, next Tuesday on the 19th, in relation to identity theft. And you'll be hearing from Mr. Gregory Lane to discuss how you can better protect yourself from identity theft and safeguard your finances as well. So make sure to save those dates, and we hope that you join us for those upcoming programs. And last but not least, an overall thank you to everybody that has attended today. We do appreciate not just your attendance, but your participation with putting questions in our Q&A and making sure that everybody is informed of in a different ways on how they can be better prepared for our upcoming elections. And if you have anything additional for us in relation to this program or anything for NC100BW-DE, our contact information or ways to follow us is also on the screen. So make sure you take that information down. And I will turn it over to Madam President if she has any additional closing remarks that she would like to give us tonight.
Thank you so much, Chair Horn. I do just want to make a calendar update. We will be taking a look at identity theft in the new year. So that will be a January event. So if everyone would just make the notes of that. I'll close with this, that voting is our right and privilege. It gives us the opportunity to make our voices heard and our opinions known. It's one of the most important acts we can do as citizens of the country and of this state. And we should take advantage of it whenever we can. Thank you all for joining us, and we bid you good night.